Hello and welcome back to another video. As you can tell, I am in my pyjamas, but it's Boxing Day, so it's fine. Today I'm going to be going through my stats for 2021 and I use Corepile, which is a spreadsheet created by G at Books Roast. I'll put a link to that in the description, and you input loads of information about the books that you read and it creates lots of beautiful graphs. And because I really like graphs, I've sort of added to it and embellished and changed some things over the year. So there's a lot to talk about all the different books that I have read. As I say, I am filming this on Boxing Day. We've got a whole week to go, but realistically, is much going to change in the next 6 days? No. So without any further ado, let's have a little look at the books that I read this year. So at the start of the year, as I was thinking about setting my reading goal, I thought, well, last year I kind of just scraped past 60, so I'll set 60 as a goal again this year. I read 131. That's a lot. It's a lot. If anything, it's too many. And of those 131, so I have a total page count of 43,105, which, and now that does include a few DNFs. I DNF'd 9 books this year, but that gives me an average page count of roughly 320. That's not, I mean, it's not that short, but it's not that long. That's a nice medium Goldilocks length for a book. But I do have a lot of really long books that I tend to put off, so we may address that next year. But yes, a lot of books, a lot of reading happened, a lot of pages were read, and although I would like to read fewer longer books next year, I'm still really glad that I was able this year to put aside the time to read those books. I think often when one of the criticisms of the bookish online community and people who read tons and tons is, oh, you're just reading it for, you're not taking it in properly, you're just whizzing through it, this, that and the other. And I would say it's more a case of putting aside the time and finding that time, and I think this year that's something I really enjoyed doing and made a point to do, is to put aside that time to read. My best reading months were February and August, which is no surprise. February we were in lockdown, August was the summer holidays. And yeah, I read a lot of books this year. So of those books, 86% of them were fiction, 13% of them were non-fiction, and less than 1%, i.e. one book, was a mixture of the two. That was Science of Difficulty. About just under half of the books I read were physical books, and then nearly 40% were ebooks, and about 12% were audiobooks. So I read a lot of audiobooks this year, which was really nice. I drove a lot more this year than I did last year, because last year was lockdown year. So a lot more long car journeys, and I just listened to a lot more audiobooks through there. The vast majority of the ebooks I read were ARCs, and I mean, I've read a lot of physical books, so what, 60 something? 60 odd physical books, which is a lot, but as a proportion, not that many. And I have a lot, so I'm going to be hoping to address that in next year's reading goals, to kind of read more of the physical books on my shelf. But my Kindle was the real MVP this year, especially towards the end of the year. As you know, I like to read a big range of genres, and this year I read 11 different fiction genres. The biggest one by a long way was fantasy, no surprises there. Now I'm very surprised that the second biggest one is contemporary. I find that really surprising. That's not something that I would consider to be a favourite genre of mine. But I do read a lot of LGBTQ books, and most LGBTQ books, or at least most kind of mainstream LGBTQ books, I guess, are contemporary. So I think that's probably where that bigger percentage has come from. That is closely followed by historical fiction, again, no surprises there, and then a bit of a smattering of other things, bit of magical realism, bit of science fiction, bit of horror, which is surprising for me. So yeah, nice little mix of good mix of fiction genres. For non-fiction, so I kind of came up with my own categories for this. The biggest one is social justice, which I have included to be any non-fiction book that focuses on some sort of inequality of any kind, or minorities of any kind, or what's the word I'm looking for? Marginalised people of any kind. So that includes sort of feminist books, intersectional feminist books, books on race, etc. So that's my biggest genre. Still only 4, but my biggest genre. Then jointly is mythology and history. They're very similar, I feel, so you know, people who like one probably like the other. Then a couple of poetry and a bit of a mix of other things as well. Now I have a lot of non-fiction on my TBR, so I'm hoping next year to read some more and hopefully boost some of those numbers on the non-fiction. Kind of following on from that, then the vast majority of books I read, so about 90%, were continuous prose all the way through, with a few anthologies, a couple of short stories, a couple of graphic novels, a couple of poetry. So yeah, I thought that was a fun thing I added to track. I thought that'd be interesting to see how many different kinds of layouts of text basically that I read. So yeah, mostly prose, no surprise, but a few others. Now I do tend to give out high star ratings. My answer to this is that I only read books that I think I'll enjoy. So chances are I'll enjoy them. You know, this isn't an average of all the books in the world, my opinion of them. It's an average of the books that I think I will enjoy. And so I gave almost as many 5 stars as 4 stars. So I gave out 49 4 stars, 45 5 stars, 25 3 stars, 7 2 stars, and 1 star. I think that's pretty good going. That is pretty good going in that, you know, I've enjoyed nearly every book I read this year. It has been a really good reading year. I've read some amazing books, and that just kind of proves it to me that it's been a great year for reading. We're going to get a bit more into the nitty-gritty now. And first of all, this graph I edited, I put in myself, I changed it from what it was before. And this is the graph of when the books I read were published. It's fairly useless because I read the Iliad at the start of the year, so you can't really distinguish between the others. That's why I'm currently reading the Odyssey to try and get it done before the 31st of December, so that it doesn't mess up next year's graph too. But I couldn't leave it out because that would be incomplete data. Nearly 80% of the books I read this year are written for adults, with a fair few written young adult, new adult, a couple of children's and a couple of middle grade as well. Again, that does not surprise me. I'm an adult, I enjoy adult fiction. That's not groundbreaking stuff. And 67% of the books I read this year I owned, so either I bought myself or someone bought for me, or I acquired myself through a non-review means, like, you know, it's like a free bookshelf or something somewhere. And 6% of the books I read, so 8 of them were borrowed, and in borrowed I've included books from the library, but also books that you read on like a subscription service. So if I've listened to the audiobook on Spotify, or if I've borrowed it on like Kindle Unlimited, I had a free trial for a bit earlier on this year. Things like that I've included on borrowed because I guess I did borrow it in that I don't still have it. And then 35 of the books I read this year it's down as gifted here. These are review copies. That's a lot. At the start of this year, I'd never read a review copy, and now I've read 35. I've really enjoyed reading review copies from NetGalley or from indie authors or from other places. I think it's been a really fun way of, well, first of all, it's a more economically sustainable way of reading 130 books in a year. But it's also just a really nice way of discovering new authors and new genres I wouldn't have read before. Like I wouldn't usually pick up mystery books, but I've read some mystery books because of it and things like that. So yeah, it's something I would like to carry on into next year. I will be carrying on into next year because I have a lot due in January. But that's a problem for future Lizzie. And that's it. Those are my statistics for my reading this year. It's been a long year. But it's been such a good reading year. I've read so many books, so many truly fantastic books, and I can't wait until next year. So keep your eyes peeled. In a couple of weeks' time there will be my reading goals for 2022 video. Some things I mentioned today, some things that I have mentioned in other videos or haven't mentioned at all. So yeah, we'll go through those next year. Let me know what your reading year looked like in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and I will see you next time. Bye!